In April of this year, news broke that Slapnuts was bringing back Global Fast Wrestling, except it was going to be more wrestling news and less actual wrestling. For any of you who missed it, back in 2014, Jeff Jarrett started his own wrestling company as he had been booted out of TNA. The idea was that it wouldn't be scripted and it would be based all in reality. The company was to bring together all the promotions around the world and put on a good show. When you think about it, he was sort of ahead of his time, because nowadays companies be working together like there's a revolving door. GFW announced partnerships with AAA and New Japan amongst others. So talent likely wouldn't be a problem. Seemingly, finding a broadcaster was also not a problem, with Slapnuts having agreed deals with the UK, France and New Zealand television. Someone important seems to be missing from that list though. The TV show would be called Amped, which isn't a bad name to be fair, and throughout 2015 and 2016 they taped 16 hours of shows. And the shows weren't just taped in the US, which is pretty cool. There was just one problem. Jarrett couldn't find anyone to broadcast his wrestling show in the States. You would think that would be something important that it would have been sorted at the start. But Jarrett believed so strongly in his product that he thought someone would pick up his show once they saw the completed version. A TV deal did not materialise for Jeff Jarrett and he sat on the footage hoping someone would bite. In the meantime, he got his foot back in the door at TNA, eventually leading to a merger between the two companies. This did not go well, as in 2018 the news emerged that TNA had mistakenly recorded over all of Jeff Jarrett's GFW tapes. You couldn't make it up. A lawsuit was filed with Jarrett claiming that the loss of the tapes had cost him $5 million. That is more than WCW sold for, by the way. The drama also affected Scott D'Amore on the dance floor, who had loaned Jeff Jarrett $300,000 to get the tapings up and running. The court stuff was eventually settled in private. So GFW Amped was condemned to the Lost Wrestling Media section and never to be seen again. Except it wasn't, as TNA had used the Amped footage to turn into some special pay-per-views of which TNA aired without Jarrett's permission. The TNA One Night Only shows are renowned, because nobody ever watched them, and they were all pointless and didn't have storylines. The One Night Only footage is all that remains of GFW Amped and accounts for about 25% of the original recordings. Right, that's the messy backstory. What I really want to do is discuss the GFW Amped product, because it actually seemed like it was alright. The show opens up with a very long package introducing all the characters we can expect to see on this show. Most notably for the heavyweights, we see that Bobby Roode was loaned to GFW from TNA, Nick Aldis, Chris Masters, Shelton Benjamin, which is someone a bit different. But the main issue is they didn't really have a megastar to get people to tune in. The commentators are Chael Sonnen, a former MMA fighter and trash talker, and he will play the heel announcer, and Cyrus Fees, a ring announcer from the UFC. We finally get to see the arena, and it looks pretty high budget, definitely better than your standard indie. You'll note that Jarrett has gone for the 6-sided ring once again. We start with the Next Gen title tournament, which is basically like their cruiserweight division. To demonstrate that this roster won't have a lack of talent, we start with a match between Sanada and PJ Black. These two guys aren't half-assed in it either. They go all out to put on an opening spectacle and show fans the type of wrestling you'll only see in GFW. PJ eventually gets the win with a 450 and he advances on in the tournament. We then meet a young Kevin Cross who is apparently only 1 year into his wrestling career. GFW would be his first major push. He's quite a big character on this show. He's playing the character of a vicious shoot fighter. He calls himself the Toll Man because he makes people pay if they try to get past him. Bobby Roode is playing the role of a heel invader from TNA. He plays up his championship success and claims no one in GFW can stop him from dominating this company too. He has a confrontation with Nick Aldis, so it really does feel like you're watching TNA. Magnus says he's joined the force because he believes in Slapnuts. Slapnuts built TNA and Slapnuts built this GFW show. I was starting to get concerned that this would just become a vanity project. Congo Kong sneaks into the ring and hits Magnus with a Samoan drop, which I'm okay with. Hilariously, GFW bill Congo Kong at 7 foot. I like Congo Kong, but that's just ridiculous. Bobby Roode locks Magnus in a crossface for about 5 seconds. I guess they were in a hurry. Talking of being in a hurry, we get a Lucha Trios match, which is honestly just so much fun here. The crowd are really into it. Los Luchadors pick up the win. This wouldn't look out of place on WWE or AEW. We get introduced to a young man called Virgil Flynn, who is apparently the smallest man on the roster. This also means he'll be the quickest, although I'm pretty sure that isn't how it works. He takes on Kushida, who at the time they're borrowing from New Japan. Flynn looks a bit nervous in the early game, but as it turns out, it's another pretty exciting match. But many of you will disagree with me here. it's 3 matches in a row which are all essentially the same match. I'm pretty sure it's the 3rd match in a row that we see a 450. A move like that is supposed to be special, but they're killing it off via repetition. Kushida taps him out via a Kimura lock, and I'm not sure what any of this really means. Kushida and Flynn hug after the match and tell each other how amazing they both are. I thought it was amazingly lame. Now, it's a ladies video package. Lady Tapper says her biggest challenge every day is looking at herself in the mirror. Bit harsh, isn't that bad? Mickie James apparently works out with her face shoved up someone's ass, according to this footage at least. There was so much gym working out footage in this show. I like seeing stuff like this, but my god, over the shows we get to see there is so much filler of gym footage. And it's not sexy gym footage either. Lady Tapper says they are not divas or knockouts, they are women. They have been promised a main event match to decide the first ever women's champion. The ladies division seems like their weakest division as it consists of only 3 people. This video package also goes on for way too long, it feels like about 10 minutes. We go from that video package to another one, hyping Karrion Kross. Despite being a rookie, he's desperate to show everybody what he's capable of. This is also incredibly repetitive to this point, where he tells us the same thing multiple times. Then Chris Masters tells us about his career. We don't need to know about your career. He reveals that he has now shaken the stigma that he is just a body guy. The Bollywood boys are here from Rinka King.
Make some noise for the Desi boys!
Unfortunately, they didn't bring their banging theme music. Who would have thought that they'd be in 2 of my videos in a row? Unlike Rinka King, we get to find out about their past and Indian heritage. They seem like nice kids. Finally a match, and it's supposed to be a big one. Bobby Roode faces off against the rookie Kevin Kross, with the winner advancing in the heavyweight tournament. The whole thing about Bobby Roode being an invader doesn't make much sense. Why would he be allowed to enter the tournament? Why would he have entrance music or multiple segments on each show? This was not like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in WCW. It turns out that this is the basic sort of match that somebody 1 year into the business would have. Roode beats him with the crossface. Appropriate. Suddenly, not this gimmick. It's a video package showing planes and talking about how nervous people are to sit next to them. They are the Akbars and they are coming soon. A confused looking man in the ring sings the national anthem in a wacky way. Nobody knows who they are and they boo. Of course, this is the time for the Akbars to make their debut. This is the kind of carny shit that you know Slapnuts loves. They beat up the singer and cut a promo in an unknown language. They face the Bollywood boys. The crowd are very receptive to the boys. Fortunately, the boys do win a fine match with a diving back elbow and an elbow drop. Their energy and enthusiasm marks them as a team for GFW to build their division around. These guys could go far. Jigsaw cuts a promo now, and based on this, I can see why we never got to hear him talk before. He sounds like a massive nerd and demonstrates a complete lack of charisma. Lady Tapper enters with her husband. She has the worst music I've ever heard, with somebody screaming Lady Tapper over and over again over the beat.
She'll be a part of our main event, but she's out here unannounced.
She got all dressed up. She came to the party. She brought some Rick Ross lookalike with her.
Tapper and her husband have a segment with Kara and Jarrett. They're upset because they're jealous of how the women's division is being built around Mickie James. Typical Kara and Jarrett promo where she puts down the talent and makes herself sound more important. This all leads to a triple threat match between Lady Tapper, Christina Von Eerie and Mickie James. Oh no, Christina is doing an oi 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 gimmick. I just can't escape this thing. The entire match is Lady Tapper dominating her 2 smaller opponents. The problem is that nobody cares about Lady Tapper. Randomly, it's Christina Von Eerie to get the win with a backstabber. It's an interesting choice to run with her because she's always been on the verge of doing something with TNA but never quite got going. Jigsaw and Sanjay Dutt have a match in the Next Gen tournament, and Jigsaw is another guy who was on the verge of signing with TNA but unfortunately he blew his big shot. They have a hell of an opening exchange which wouldn't look out of place on today's television. They aren't half-arsing it, and surprisingly Jigsaw beats Sanjay Dutt. It's good to see Jeff Jarrett trying to push new talents over the ones who have already had their chance. The singer from earlier on is now a manager for Congo Kong for some reason. Kong is described as green, despite having 15 years ring experience. He takes on Nick Aldis, who it feels like GFW were trying to turn into their top face star. There's constant fat jokes on commentary about Congo Kong. I thought heel commentators were supposed to be supportive of heel wrestlers. I've always enjoyed Congo's moveset. He's not boring and he is athletic. It's a shame he never got a big shot anywhere. Kong gets 90% of this match. There's a fake finish in this match where Aldis throws Kong off the top and hits the diving elbow, but Kong still kicks out. Aldis eventually powers in with a slam, and that is enough to do the job. Probably my favourite match to this point. Many of the matches are starting to feel the same as you go along. There's lots of high-flying action, but it's weak on storylines and purpose. Perhaps they did film stuff which was lost, and we'll never know. Slapnuts, of course, makes a ring appearance to boost his ego with thank yous from the crowd. This goes on forever, until Bobby Roode interrupts the pointless rambling promo. He makes fun of the crowd chanting thank you Jeff for founding a pointless promotion like GFW. If he'd just waited a couple more years, it'd be a pyramid scheme. He'd have more ammo to throw at Jeff Jarrett. He's angry because Jeff hasn't given him his proper props. Jeff punishes Roode by saying he has to face Eric Young in the heavyweight tournament. Everybody's favourite Joey Ryan is also here in a new tag team called Tease and Sleaze. His partner Kenny King has also renamed himself Kenny Climax. I'm sure you're all disappointed that we didn't see this gimmick in a bigger company. It gets worse though as they interrupt a Karen Jarrett promo and strip for the crowd and bump and grind on each other. This officially marks the only time that I'd rather watch a Karen Jarrett promo than see something else. They are a complete joke and they get beaten up by one woman.
This is Juicy Joey. I'm Kenny Climax, and we are Tease and Sleaze.
Because there's only one double J around here, and it sure as hell isn't you.
Slapnut's mic time continues growing as he cuts a promo lasting forever, honouring the life of Roddy Piper. This wasn't actually filmed with the rest of the show, it was some time before. Roddy was supposed to appear in GFW, but met his sad demise just before. I believe the film that they're hyping up is The Last Saint. This feels like an awkward fit on the show. Piper's co-star is called Brett, and he looks like a Brett. Fortunately, something that isn't lost media is Shelton Benjamin having a match, and a video package. Shelton gets an incredible welcome from the fans, and they truly treat him like he's a superstar. The comedy team hype him up as the biggest miss in WWE history. He has this match against Kratos Jr., who I really only know from NWA. It is short, but it's to the point. Shelton gets to show off some athleticism and wins with the pay dirt. Up to this point, it does feel like Shelton should be the guy in this company. He does look a bit worse for wear at the end of the match though. Rudy Roode returns with another promo against Slapnuts. He's now the TNA King of the Mountain champion. It feels awkward as he is attacked by another TNA guy, Eric Young. So we've essentially got two heels feuding who have already had a million TNA matches. Plus, you know, it's Eric Young. He has no explanation for why he's here. Is he invading like Bobby Roode? I don't know. He's here because he's crazy, I guess. Some other familiar names on this show are Bulldog Hart Smith, who has blonde hair which makes him look like Heidenreich, and his tag team partner is Lance Hoyt, the Killer Elite Squad. They take on Gallows and Anderson, which is essentially 4 guys on loan for Japan. Bullet Club win. The commentator has a friendship with Chris Masters for some reason. Chris says he's going to take Mickie James and force her to make a mistake. It doesn't land the same way as if Scott Steiner had delivered it. Or the Hawk for that matter. Magnus is livid at them for speaking about his wife like this. It's relieving to finally get a storyline around a tournament match. Magnus ends up beating Chris Adonis, so I guess Mickie won't be making any stakes for him anytime soon. There's also another women's match in a triple threat, Amber O'Neil, Katie Lee and Laura James. It's clear who's winning this one because Amber O'Neil married Doc Gallows and they're trying to make a big deal out of her being a part of the Bullet Club. They call her the Bullet Babe. She books her place in the final for the women's title. Pretty nice X Factor. Kevin Cross makes a return after not being seen since a huge build-up and a loss to Bobby Roode. He beats everybody's favourite Joey Ryan in a match that won't further his career. Alright, it's time for Shelton Benjamin to compete in a match with Roode to get into the finals. But no, instead we get Slapnuts, which isn't quite the same thing. It's announced that Shelton got a concussion in that last match and has had to pull out of the tournament. A damn shame. A man called Stu Stone makes his way out with Chris Adonis again. I'm pretty sure he's on his 3rd manager already. They apologise to Jeff and Nick Aldis for being dicks. They're just apologising though because Adonis wants to take Shelton Benjamin's spot in the tournament. Jarrett calls him a clown and thinks it's silly that Masters thinks he can get another shot. Stu Stone and Slapnuts almost fight and nothing is really solved. The Slapnuts squad meet in the back. Jeff is really confused about who Stu Stone even is. He tries to tell us about a title match taking place tonight, but can't quite remember the names of anybody in this one. So I'll tell you who it is. It's the Next Gen title and it's a fatal 4-way. PJ Black, TJP, Jigsaw and Virgil Flynn, who makes the girls grin. He's been built up as the underdog of GFW. PJ Black will win this one and become the Next Gen champion in a fun squash match. The heel commentator is still being a dick. He is actually extremely good on the mic. He cuts a promo demanding a match. Everybody's favourite Joey Ryan cuts a very strange promo saying that he's now ditched Kenny King and he's got a new partner because he's a swinger and he likes multiple partners. The other guy isn't even allowed to speak because he's Joey Ryan's slave or something. The new partner doesn't help him improve his win-loss record. Going back to the problem with a void spot on the heavyweight title tournament, a triple threat match is made to decide who's taking Shelton Benjamin's spot. But instead they don't fill the spot. We get a bye and a match to decide who's going to face the first champion. Congo Kong wins, which means he'll face the winner of the tournament. Now speaks up from this hawk. Kevin Cross is still failing in the big matches. The world title match comes down to Bobby Roode and Nick Aldis. So once again it feels like TNA. Could they not have found someone else to push who didn't have that TNA stench? Magnus just can't get away from Chris Masters. Christina Von Eerie becomes the first women's champion, beating the Bullet Babe, but much like her career up to this point, unfortunately this wouldn't lead anywhere for her. The tag titles are decided in a match between the Bollywood Boys and the Oi 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 Mohawk guys. I know the Hawk love Rinky King, but never have I ever wanted a team to beat the Mohawk guys so badly. Unfortunately they do, and the Bollywood Boys are crowned the first ever tag team champions. Unlike Christina Von Eerie, they had some good stuff still to come. In the World Title Tournament final, Nick Aldis is able to see off Bobby Roode. But his celebration is short-lived because he gets a gang beatdown. And just like any show relating to TNA, the final part of the GFW show is Jeff Jarrett climbing into the ring like the ultimate hero, trying to protect Magnus. Except it's worse than TNA at this point because Jarrett isn't even a performer on this GFW show. At least Jarrett doesn't beat everybody up. Maybe he's finally learning. But they do lay the belt on him as the show goes off the air. Maybe they were confused over who the champion was. And that right there, my little friends, was all that remained of Jeff Jarrett's footage. Does that feel like $5 million footage? Well, no, not really. But at the same time, just looking at it, you have to imagine that a large part of money was needed to pull this show off. It did look professional. There were lots of wrestlers to pay. They toured. You know, none of that's cheap. Maybe $5 million isn't so unrealistic. But on the flip side, just because Jarrett values it at that doesn't mean it's actually worth it. Value is only truly earned if someone's willing to pay the price, and as they weren't, no one in the US would broadcast it, so it wasn't as valuable as Jarrett thought it was. It wasn't a bad show, it was just missing some energy and compelling storylines. It really just came off as a watered down version of TNA. The in-ring stuff was great, it always is in modern wrestling, but they just didn't offer anything that other people weren't offering. We were promised reality and unscripted promos, but nothing interesting or different happened. It felt like a missed opportunity. It felt like a half-assed effort. It wasn't as carny as I was expecting either, which would have at least made it different. Ultimately, the failings lie with a lack of creativity and a weak-ass roster. They needed a few more stars instead of having to rely on Bobby Roode and Magnus. Whilst they are both good in their own right, it's nothing that's going to move the needle. They didn't have their own AJ Styles. Most of the roster were solid hands, but they were all C-tier players. And maybe a couple of guys in the B-tier. If the footage had aired properly on telly, maybe there was more to it. I don't know. But based on what I saw, I wouldn't have watched it. It wasn't must-see, it wasn't charming, it wasn't unique, it was just a bit desperate. And if you don't agree with that, I'll kick you with my foot.